It's Labor Day, and that's got me wondering, who's doing work for Carolina this season?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Monday, September 2nd, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Carolina content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch of your Labor Day. Yes, and a special shout out to all of you everydayers joining us, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord family, and of course, all the Locked On Tar Heels insiders who are here as well. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy, which fixes tired fast. With zero sugar in a convenient portable size, it's the perfect pick-me-up for getting stuff done. Go to 5hourenergy.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order, which is only valid, this code, until September 30th on one order and can't be used with any other promotions. Go to 5hourenergy.com today. All right, guys, how on earth is it September? I don't know, but it's here, and I love it because that means football is in the air. We are 9 weeks to the day from college basketball starting. NFL starts later this. I mean, it's just a great time to be alive. And with Labor Day, you know, you're probably cooking out. My family's going on a little adventure hike thing today close to our house. All sorts of fun stuff going on. But it's got me wondering this question. Who's going to do work for Carolina this year? I started thinking about that over the weekend. Maybe that sounds silly, but I thought it'd be a fun conversation for us to have today. And so we're going to start by talking who's doing work for Carolina men's basketball. Then we're going to talk about who's doing work for Carolina football. Then I want to look at, what does it mean that the Tar Heels were able to pick up this win at Minnesota? What does it mean for this season and the vibes and the feels around it? So we'll get to all of that, plus a weekend whip around. Man, we had our first full weekend of action, all sorts of teams getting after it. So it's going to be a fun conversation, kicking off a brand new week in September. Wow. So again, the question, who's going to do work for the Heels this year? And here's how I'm defining gonna do work. Someone that just has to step into some sort of role that is critically important. Maybe it's doing a lot of small stuff to help the team win. Maybe it's being a vocal leader in a new way. Maybe, just doing what needs to be done. Who's out there getting it done? So, for example, last season with basketball, for me, this would have been awarded to Harrison Ingram. I thought he just did so many different things on so many different nights to help Carolina win in a multitude of ways. I also would have taken a little scoop of Cormac Ryan on the side for that, just in the terms of his leadership and accountability, how he kept everyone to task, those kind of things. So you can define this in a couple different ways, but there's just this overall, you're putting in work, man, and I see it. So as always with this kind of question, I'd love to hear your answer for this. So here's where I'm going to start. And it's, when I started thinking about this question, I did not think this would be where I started, but it's where I found my way to. So from a varied skill set standpoint, in a similar way to how I said I would have awarded this to Harrison Ingram last year, Drake Powell is my first answer to who's doing work for Carolina this year. Here's why. I truly think that despite his freshmanness and despite his youth, Drake Powell has the capability to do so many various things and will do so many things to help this team win. And I don't think that we're always going to know what it's going to be on a given night. Now, sometimes we will, because he's the kind of guy that from what it seems like, he's the kind of player that's like, Coach Davis, tell me what you need from me in this game, and I'm going to go make it happen. But then there's other games where it won't be known. It won't be a game plan thing. It'll just be like, oh, did you see that that little thing Drake Powell did that helped Carolina win, right? Now, I don't think he'll be able to do that at the same consistent level that a grizzled vet would be, you're still going to have some freshman peaks and valleys with Drake. Just accept that. So it's not going to be like Danny Green's senior year, just stuffing the stat sheet in a gajillion ways, night in, night out, or Theo Pinson, like that kind of thing. But when Drake's on, I think that's what he's going to be bringing. And I think something that Drake brings that neither of those guys bring at the same level is the defense. And that is part of what makes this so critical to me, because obviously, yes, when we think about this team and defense, our brains go to Seth Trimble. But now Seth Trimble can be joined by the man Drake Powell. So you need to lock someone up. Drake Powell can do it. Do you need someone to go grab a board? Do you need a distributor, a playmaker? Do you need someone to lead the break, someone to go get to the rim? Do you need positional size to go post up other small forwards, a la what Harrison Ingram did at the forward position last year? And maybe Drake will do some of that, because this dude is 6'6", and he would be able to be quicker probably than a lot of power forwards, stereotypical power forwards anyway. Modern power forwards kind of built in this mold. But if he's playing the three, I think he's going to have some size on those guys. So there's just a lot of that Drake Powell's going to bring to the table. Again, some games, I think it's going to be prescriptive of like, we need you to do this against Clemson. We need this specific thing from you tonight when we go to Kansas, whatever it is. Now, the gonna do work that I don't necessarily expect Drake Powell to be ready to do yet, or to need to do yet, is the leadership side of things. And so from that standpoint, like what we got chiefly from Cormac Ryan, I believe, last year, and then also from Harrison Ingram, who was the first person to any skirmish, like, you will not step up to my teammate. I will end you. Like that was Harrison Ingram's role last year. Cormac Ryan always just kind of had this unhinged feel to him, where it's like, you ain't going to mess with Cormac Ryan, or who knows what might happen to you. Carolina needs that this year. So who's doing work at that leadership level? For me, I think it's got to be Elliot Cadeau. And here's why I say that. That level of vocal leadership has never really been RJ Davis's game or personality, temperament, whatever you want to say. And I do think that he will embrace more of that this year, especially with Armando out the door now, although that was never really Armando's temperament either. With RJ, it seems like he's expressed more of a desire to step into that more, but I think Elliot's got to do it. As the point guard, and in a very sort of quarterback way, as we get into football season here, he's got to be the one to own and guide and lead and direct this team. Yes, I know he's a sophomore, and I know, there are multiple players who have seniority to him, both in terms of college basketball life and Carolina life. But if we can all rally around Elliot and say, look, this is our dude leading and guiding the way, that to me is a win. And I think we were going to look to some of that from Zayden Hyde this year, just with his willingness to mix it up at times. But obviously that won't be a thing now. And so I really do think Elliot has that capability, and I'm excited to see him do it. And then the other, this actually is kind of a group that needs to do work, in my opinion, is a couple guys in the front court. And yes, Jalen Washington needs to, but not in the same way that I'm about to talk about. Carolina's front court needs to have some just junkyard dog, some like, I will go out and do anything this team needs. I will do the grunt work. I will whatever, mix it up. Just be tough, hard-nosed basketball player. And it's got to be multiple guys. And so for me, that is some kind of combination of Ven-Allen Lubin, Jae'lyn Withers, and Tyzhaun Claude. I think those three guys each bring something to the table that feels like it just could be this X factor. I'm doing work. And similar to what I said about Drake Powell, we might not know what that's going to be game in and game out. And I don't even know that we necessarily know what that is yet, what this work is that they've got to do. But Carolina needs a level of physicality that I think we're worried about them having right now, especially, we just don't, it's not really Jalen Washington's game. Maybe it will be from Drake Powell, but we don't necessarily, with RJ and Elliot being a little bit undersized. Seth can bring some physicality. I think Ian will, just because he's a blur, and I'm curious to see about Drake Powell. But it's these three guys that I believe have the ability to bring some of that for North Carolina this season. And like with Ven-Allen Lubin, I saw a comment this weekend, and it's fair that I am potentially sleeping on Ven-Allen Lubin this season. And to that I say, boy, I hope I am. Right? Like I'm not convinced that he's going to be capable of just being a really strong front court player in what Carolina needs. And part of that is because I've not seen it in the way that I think Carolina is going to have to use it this year. So I think that's part of it. But I hope that I'm dead wrong. I hope that Ven-Allen Lubin proves me wrong and, like laughs in my face about it. Man, I would eat that up, because it means that Carolina is getting out of him what everyone hoped they could. But Jae'lyn Withers settling into his second year, settling into what role Carolina needs him to play. Tyzhaun Claude just settling into Carolina needs me to just rebound the heck out of the basketball and going and doing that. So all of that is some of what I think Carolina, the work that needs to get done, whether it's Elliot's leadership, whether it's Drake Powell's everythingness, and it's some combination of one or all three of these front court players, Lubin, Withers, and Claude, just absolutely going to work inside and saying, you are not going to come in. Yes, we might be a little bit undersized, but we're some physical dudes and we won't stand for it. So there you go. Now let's move from the basketball team to the exact same question about the football team. Who's doing work for Carolina football this season? I'll give you my answers for that right after I tell you about 5-Hour Energy, which fixes tired fast. When you got a long list of DIY projects to tackle at home, like I did right before I started recording, take a 5-Hour Energy shot so you can check everything off your list. And if you're like me and you got a large list of home projects, when you go get your supplies, don't forget the most important supply, the most essential supply, a 5-Hour Energy shot. 5-Hour Energy is the brand that hardworking people have trusted for over 20 years to give them the alert, energized feel they need to get through a busy, hectic day. You've always known where to find that 5-Hour Energy, right? It's right at the cash register at nearly every convenience, drug, and grocery store you can find nationwide. So go find it there and stock up on money-saving multi-packs to make sure you never run out of delicious, energizing 5-Hour Energy shots. Just go to 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5, not spelled out, and get some 5-Hour Energy product today. And you can use my promo code LOCKEDONCFB to receive 20% off your order. That offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with any other promotions, and the code is no good on subscription orders. So go get you some. 5hourenergy.com today. It's Labor Day. We're answering the question, who's doing work for Carolina? Right now, that's Carolina football specifically. First off, doing work for this crew has to look a lot different than it did last year. Last year and the year before, Carolina relied so heavily on Drake May that this is not going to be earth-shattering for you to hear. It's hidden a whole multitude of other sins that were covered by Drake May's capability. Now, it's not that Carolina didn't have talent at other positions. They clearly did, because Drake can't do it all. He's not going to catch his own footballs. He can't. Yeah, he was a great rusher, but he can't do literally all of it. And not that Carolina doesn't have deficiencies this year, but there are ways in which this team, even after game 1, looks like the potential to be a more complete team. And so this year, in terms of doing work has got to be all hands on deck week after week after week after week. It's got to be the offense, which has got a lot to figure out, by the way. It's got to be the defense, and it's got to be special teams. Isn't that weird that right now, after week 1, it feels like it's the offense that has more to get figured out than either the defense or special teams. We'll get to more on that in a second. But the first person that, to me, has to do work is Connor Harrell. Why? Yes, I know Jacoby Criswell is in the mix, but with Max Johnson's unfortunate injury, this just became Connor Harrell's team. And I believe that because he's the one that's been here, because he's been the one that's been putting the work in the whole time. Yes, again, Jacoby Criswell is lurking, but I've got to think that Connor Harrell is going to be given every opportunity over the course of the next couple weeks against lesser competition, with apologies to Charlotte and NC Central and James Madison, which will be the best of those three teams. Connor Harrell is going to have the chance in those three games, I think, to prove that this is his time. And I know ordinarily you would think, oh man, let's get him in and get him out of the game, rest and all that. I think this is your opportunity to figure out everything that you've got with Connor Harrell. And yeah, you want to be blowing these teams out and get Criswell in the second half or maybe midway through the third quarter, something like that. But I want as many reps as possible with Connor Harrell and the ones. No division of labor. Just let that go. I think that Connor Harrell has the opportunity to own this, and the next 3 weeks are going to be pivotal and critical. So Connor Harrell, that man's got to do work. Next, this is a group that I think has to do work, and that is Carolina's defensive line. The past several years, obviously, the deficiencies in the defense have manifested themselves chiefly on the defensive line and in the secondary. There's been guy after guy at the linebacker position that have just been dudes. It's funny, as Cedric Gray steps away, it's time for the defensive line to step up. The secondary as well. We'll talk about that later. But I want to, it's the D line that to me has this work to do. Part of it is because the offense projects to not be as explosive as we're used to in Mac Brown 2.0, the defense is going to have to be better than just okay or bend, don't break. It's got to be stronger than that. And that starts up front. This defensive line is just going to have to make life absolutely miserable for opposing offensive lines and quarterbacks and running backs who are trying to pass protect or get through holes. The defense line has to just fill every bit of that up and make life a living hell in the backfield. And aside from a couple breakdowns on Thursday night, not many, obviously they're amplified when they happen, especially late in the game. But aside from a couple breakdowns, the secondary is going to do their part. And that's going to give you time to get after it as a line, whether it's coverage sacks or whatever it is. And so, look, the biggest name, the biggest guy doing work Thursday, stat-wise, was Javari Ritzie. Everyone's talking about his 3 sacks. Well, go with me on this. The first one was, quite frankly, compliments of Stick Lane, just getting immediately into the backfield on a great blitz and basically supplanting the running back and putting him in Max Brosmer's lap and saying, here, good luck, deal with this. Actually, he didn't do that, because then if you watch the sack, go back and watch this sack, up in the top of the screen, you'll actually see Stick Lane continuing to drive the running back backwards. It's hilarious. Anyway, Javari Ritzie was the happy recipient of that work. Right now, he still had to clean it up and still do it. That's not nothing. But so much of that is due to Stick Lane. The second sack that he got, there's a 5-man line, all rush. They collapsed the pocket brilliantly, and somebody was going to get Brosmer in this situation. Just so happened that it was Ritzie. It was great. And again, you got to do it because he could get out of your clutches. Good on Ritzie for doing it. But the third sack, oh, baby, that third sack, that was special. That was Ritzie just straight up chasing down Brosmer behind the line and just wrecking his life. Not in a, helmet to sternum kind of way, because it wasn't that, but just like, if you're a quarterback, you do not expect this big lineman to come chase you down. And that's what I mean by wrecking his life. Like, oh, I can't outrun you. Also, great on Ritzie for not being saddled with a horse collar penalty. That's an easy one to be, that from behind chase down. Man, that's a horse collar so often. So great on Ritzie for that awareness with his tackling. So that D-line, Des Evans, Kevin Hester Jr., Kamen Rucker, Javari Ritzy. These guys, the starting four of it, at least they were this week. We'll see if that continues. I expect it to. Just have to keep doing work game after game after game. And I don't think Kamen's going to let him not, because that dude just goes. But man, this is Des Evans' year to finally just like lean into it. And there's got to be, it's got to be more than just those four. It's got to be Travis Shaw and Bo Atkinson, amongst others, right? Because that's part of where things have fallen apart the last couple of years. You had that great performance against South Carolina in last year's season opener, and then the defense just got progressively worse. And a lot of that's on the coaching staff to use that depth. But man, it's got to be there. These guys got to do work. And then the last group that's got to do work is the secondary. Jakeem Harris, the NC State transfer who clearly made the right choice in his life, led the team in tackles from the safety position on Thursday night, just getting downhill and doing work. I know Brosmer wasn't slinging it around a ton, and part of that is because, yes, there are going to be better receiving corps that Carolina faces this year, but Elijah Huzzy and Marcus Allen did very well in coverage, and I know there was that DPI on Allen late that might lead you to believe otherwise, but that's just one out of a multitude of coverages throughout the game, right? And you only see it when bad things turns up a lot of times. And so that was allowing the D-line to do what they need to do, because the secondary is doing what they need to do. Stick Lane had some nice moments. I know there was that miss on the sideline where he just kind of olayed past that runner, but Caleb Cost out there, other guys working into the secondary, getting DeAndre Boykins back out and going after his injury last year. And so this secondary, man, just the secondary has to join with the D-line and with the linebackers, and it's just got to be this beautiful complementary work that all of them do together. So that is what I'm looking for the Carolina football work. Now, thanks to that work and more, the Tar Heels pick up a week 1 win at Minnesota. And I got to tell you, that win changes the vibes of the entire season. We'll talk about why and get to our weekend whip around, all coming up in just a second. But first, Locked On Tar Heels fans, I want to take a moment to give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love. It's called the Ultimate College Football Head Coach. It's an amazing simulation in which you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program to glory. Can you imagine actually stepping in and being Mac Brown? Well, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, dealing with scholarships and more, you control every crucial detail of your program. You think you can handle that pressure? And here's what else I just kind of love about this game. You're responsible for calling all the offensive plays. So your strategy is not only going to determine the success of your season, but will shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football Head Coach is completely free. It's got no ads and is 100% playable offline so that you can play anytime, anywhere you want. And of course, I got a special offer for you, Locked On Tar Heels family. Use promo code Locked On CFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost for your program. To download the game, just visit ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football Head Coach. Begin your coaching legacy today. I know that Thursday evening was an iffy proposition. I know that it's easy to look back and avoided both of those missed field goals, one early, one late, from a really good kicker. Oh, by the way, from Minnesota. And it's like, did we deserve all that? Get rid of that. Here's the takeaway from last Thursday night. North Carolina won a football game on the road to start the season for the first time since 1992. The North Carolina Tar Heels are 1-0. There are a lot of other football teams around this country who are not currently 1-0, but the Tar Heels are. And that's legitimately all week 1 needs to be. Survival. Doing whatever it is to win the game. A stop here, a stop there, a missed field goal here, a play there, a special team stop here, whatever it is. And beyond just winning, not many Power 4 conference teams went on the road this weekend, period. Even fewer went on the road this weekend and won. I'm looking at you, Virginia Tech, right? Like, yikes. How are you going to go lose to Vandy? But Carolina was a team from a Power 4 conference that went on the road and won this weekend. And that, friends, is not nothing. That's a big, big deal. Because a couple things. One, what that does is gives you now 3 weeks against lower level opponents, which you obviously can't take lightly. It's a football game. You could go out and lose it. But you've got 3 weeks against not as talented opponents on paper to figure out what's next. I think primarily, obviously, as we talked about just a little bit ago, that is at the quarterback position. I believe that you give Connor Harrell the reins and let him roll. But I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Brown gives some opportunities to Jacoby Criswell and see if he's ready to go. But you've got these 3 weeks. So it's Charlotte this week, NC Central next, and then James Madison in week 4. And James Madison, oh, by the way, just beat Charlotte this weekend 30-7. So, yeah, I mean, these next 2 games are really big opportunities to find out what you got. But in the process of the practices the next couple weeks, in the processes of these games, you get to figure out things like this. What was real about the defense and what was not? Because I think last year after week 1, we thought, oh, is this the year? And it wasn't. So let's work on figuring that out. Number 2, how do we get the offense to get moving? Omarion Hampton was Omarion Hampton. But we need to see his backups. We got to know what we have in those guys. But and outside of Omarion, we got to figure the receivers, both of the wide receiver and tight end variety, are too talented and too many to let them go to waste. So how do we get them the ball, and how do we get more of them the ball? An interesting factor in the offensive things that we got to figure out the next couple of weeks as well. I'm not sure if you listen to the Carolina Insider podcast. That's with Jones Angel, who's the voice of the Tar Heels, and Adam Lucas, who just writes brilliant stuff after games and just a great and talented writer. But they had JJ Jones on, receiver JJ Jones, last week for an interview. And one of the things he talked about in that interview that I found really fascinating was the difference in getting first team reps with Max Johnson, Connor Harrell, and Jacoby Criswell, particularly when one of them is a lefty, like the ball just comes out differently from a lefty. And so now, while you unfortunately take Max Johnson out of the equation, this is part of why I think you hone in on Connor Harrell, because then there's just a different rapport that's built over the course of these next 3 weeks before you start ACC play. Get these receivers all used to getting the ball from Connor. Whatever any of those things are, let's just get that figured out. And now the whole team knows it as well. It's not just Connor knows it, because that's important. It's also important that the rest of the team knows it. Another thing you got to figure out, how do we take what the special teams did and bottle that up and do it time and time and time again, from punting to kickoffs to field goals? I mean, it was brilliant. And then you win those games and you're 4-0 heading into ACC play on the road at Duke. And I mean, being 4-0, if Carolina can get there, is going to feel great. And 3-1 would have been fine. But just 4-0 just feels so different. And so the Tar Heels getting that win, I mean, you think back to like the game against Virginia Tech in Sam Howell's last year. Carolina goes up there to start the season and loses, and it just, the whole season just felt off after that. It just felt like it never got up and running. And so not that Carolina couldn't come back and won a bunch of games this year, because they could have. But it's just different since they won it, because now it gives you the opportunity to build on that and to not say, oh, fine, whatever, right? Like, no, things are good. And here's the other nice thing about having gone on the road to start. Yes, Carolina will go to Duke in week 5, but obviously that's a short trip. That trip aside, the next time Carolina goes on a real road trip is October 26th, just under 2 months away. And that's just to Charlottesville. So Carolina is essentially at home from now through the end of October. There's something to that. Now, you're going to have to learn how to play on the road late at Virginia, at Florida State, at Boston College. Okay, cool, fine. we'll know who we are by then and be ready to go. So massive to get this win. Lots to do in the meantime ahead of Charlotte and NC Central and James Madison. All right, let's get to our weekend whip around really quick here. Coming off of the weekend, just recap. The women's soccer team beat North Dakota on Thursday 3-0, and then they finished off another shutout on Sunday. This one over Seton Hall 2-0. That's 3 straight shutouts for the women on the season. They're now 6-0. The 2 goals on Sunday came from co-captains Bella Sember and Tessa De La Rose. They're each of them their 3rd goal of the season. Carolina has now outscored their opponents 16-6. Yeah. Men's soccer won on Thursday 3-1 over FIU. They played tonight against ETSU 7:30 Eastern on ACC Network Extra. Field hockey, their first 2 matches of the season on Friday. They played at Michigan, beat the Wolverines 4-1. Thank you very much to start the season. And then on Sunday, earlier in the day, played at Michigan again, but against number 6 Iowa. Beat them 2-1 on the road. Take that Big Ten, suckers. So field hockey off to a 2-0 start. That's what you expect from Coach Matson's team. Volleyball, 3 matches this weekend, swept them all, literally didn't drop a set. 3-0 versus Cleveland State on Friday to open the season. 3-0 against Charleston on Saturday, and 3-0 against Western Carolina Sunday. I know it's not the world's most, the talent level isn't crazy high. The competition level, that's what I'm looking for, isn't crazy high. But, man, you'll take it. 3 sweeps to start the season. Cross country, Charlotte Invitational, their season opener this weekend. Men and women both take home first place finishes. This was on Friday morning, and it's against Charlotte and Queens. So, again, not ACC level competition, but you'll take it. Men had 6 of the top 10 finishers. The women had all of the top 5. So really great showings, just getting season kicked off and running. And so excited to see just more great performances out of Tar Heels on every field of competition. That's great stuff. And I love that we get to share that on here and just keep you up to date with everything going on in Carolina land. All right, guys, it's great to kick off this new week. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, please make sure you do so on audio and video. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord channel, man, come join us there. It's absolutely free. Link for that's in the show notes. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. Also, I want to invite you to join the brand new Locked On Tar Heels Insider Program, where you have direct access to text with me one-on-one all the time. It's great stuff. I also make free, available to you insiders, all of my stats and charts and data and all of that free for you just by becoming an insider. Everybody gets a free 14 days to try it out. And then after that, it's just $5 a month. Great way to be able to support the show, by the way. If you enjoy Locked On Tar Heels and we need help out, it's a great way to do it. And as a reward, we get to hang out and you get to see all my stats. So make sure to hop on that. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.